Hello, class 12. I'm Dr. Bhawani. Today I have come with a story, A Respectable Woman, written by Carrie Chopin. It is a short tips for the students to understand the story and write in their examination. A Respectable Woman is a story written by Carrie Chopin. It centers around the character of Mrs. Baroda and her inner conflict is she finds herself attracted to her husband's friend. The conflict that resided in her mind troubled her inwardly. Her sensuous feelings towards Governor had to be in her control to be a respectable woman. Her dilemma of being a respectable woman became a problem for her. Her prejudices about Governor forced her to leave her house, and she did not become ready to return her home until and unless he left her home. She had become social and asked her husband to call her husband's friend, and she wanted to be kind and loving to him at this time at the inn, right? She started looking at things from a humanitarian perspective. That means when she wanted him to call back again in her house from her husband, she decided to be humanitarian, kind, loving, and then later she asked her husband to call him back. Governor was a university classmate of Mrs. Baroda's husband, Mr. Gaston, who was her husband. He had become a journalist. Mr. Governor had become a journalist and known as a public man. He lived in the city and was as busy as the working machine. Mr. Garson talked about him too much, and Mrs. Baroda formed an image of him in her mind. She pictured him tall, slim, with eyeglasses and his hands in his pockets, and she did not like him. Before she saw him, she did not like him with the talk of her husband. When he arrived at her home, she found him slim enough, but he was not very tall, and did not wear glasses, and did not put his hands in his pockets, so she liked him. That means when he came and in her house, she found that he was different from what she had imagined, and she liked him later. Governor wanted to be away from city life for the time being. That means he was busy in the working in the city and wanted to be pressed in the country life, right? Governor bought a white scarf as a gift to Mrs. Baroda. He gave it to her and talked freely and intimately. She wanted to draw close to him and have a sexual relationship with him, but she drew away from him to be a respectable woman. Means one day when he came in his house in our house and then he bought a gift and then he just became close and started talking with Mrs. Baroda. At that time she wanted to be close with him and she was almost out of control of having sexual relationship with him, but she realized at the very moment and that she had to be a respectable woman and she moved away. If she had not controlled herself at that time, she would not have become a respectable woman. She went to the city early in the morning. That means next day she left her house and decided not to return till Governor was gone from her house. Otherwise, she would not have become respectable woman. Gaston wanted to call Governor in the summer, but Mrs. Baroda opposed in it. Later, Gaston wanted to call his friend again in the summer, but she refused, and he could not become able to call him in his house. But before the end of the year, she asked her husband to call Governor, and Mr. Garson got surprised by it. And later, when Mrs. Baroda asked her husband to call his friend back by the end of the year, and at that time she had already changed her attitude, her concept, her thought. She had become humanitarian. She had become loving, kind, and helpful to Mr. Governor and wanted her husband to call his friend back. Thank you very much. This is a short summary and main idea. You can just write these ideas in your exam and understand the story.